All right. This is a screencast about point of view, creating the story's voice using point of view. There's a little bit of review. What is point of view? Well, point of view is the vantage point from which the writer tells a story. So, a writer tells a story through the voice of a narrator, obviously, and the narrator may be outside, an observer, or he might be, or she might be a character in the story. Everything you learn about the characters, events, and places in the story depend on the narrator's point of view, how much he or she can see or not see, what he or she knows about the other characters, the setting, the conflict itself. The points of view that we've talked about, the three most common, are, of course, third person omniscient, third person limited, and first person, or we could also say first person limited. Um, and third person omniscient point of view, we've talked about that. That is the narrator as a God with a little g. The narrator plays no part in the story but can tell us what all the characters are thinking and feeling as well as what is happening in other places. So the narrator can see all if he or she chooses to do so. The omniscient narrator can tell us as much or as little as the writer permits, may tell us what all or only some of the characters are thinking, feeling, and observing, and may comment on the story's meaning, the characters, or the events. So looking at all angles and can tell us as much. Very powerful type of point of view. We can look at this one. This is something we looked at on our test. And you can see in green, it is third person omniscient because the narrator knows what Ruth is feeling, knows what Gary knows and what he thinks and what he worries about, and then also Janice's attitude down here at the bottom about her audition. So we can see in all of these. Third person limited is what it is. It's still outside, um, but it zooms in through the thoughts and feelings, usually of only one character, and most times that is the protagonist, the main character in the story. The third person narrator views the actions from the vantage point of a single character, can tell us only what the single character is thinking, feeling, and observing. So if the character is in a room, he or she, the narrator, cannot tell us what's going on outside of the room if the character can't see outside. Um, and we can look at this example here. Gary paced back and forth in front of the mirror. He glanced towards Ruth and smiled. She looked to him. Then we have he admired. He was too aware of what other people thought of him. He sometimes played the clown, but only when he knew that he would get a laugh. We are seeing the world from Gary's point of view. We don't know Mr. Glover, what his point of view is, other than what he has said to Gary. Maybe that is why Mr. Glover always cast him in a comic role. Maybe there's no certainty because Gary is not certain. He wanted a chance. So we're looking at the world through only Gary's eyes here. And so it's a completely different feel because there is an uncertainty to that. In the same way, we as a person might be uncertain in a situation because we don't know. First person point of view, first person point of view, the narrator is telling the story, in the story. And that pronoun of I, me, my is used throughout this. The first person narrator participates in the story, can tell us only what he or she is feeling, thinking, and observing. So it is limited, usually. Very often, not very often, do you have a first person narrator that knows all. And it wouldn't make much sense because none of us know all. Um, may or may not be objective, honest, or perceptive about what's going on in the story. A lot of times with a first person narrator, they have their own agenda. He or she has his or her own agenda. So they might not be very objective in looking at it. There's a bias there, and the writer chooses to do that. I stared at the wall. I've never felt love. I always thought, who was I to quibble? I was willing. I would have to. That first person pronoun tells us right off the bat, first person point of view. Why is point of view important? The narrator's point of view determines what and how much you learn about a story's characters, the events, and the places. It is important to evaluate the credibility and knowledge of the narrator. Ask yourself, how much does the narrator know and understand? Think about Montresor, a first person Narrator, and we only see the world through his eyes. We do not know what Fortunato did, nor does he tell us. We do not know how Montresor is seen by anyone else other than what Montresor chooses to tell us. How much does the narrator want me to know? How would this story be different if someone else were telling it? Obviously, changing the vantage point of where you're looking in general changes what you see, and changing that point of view does the same thing as well. Can you trust this narrator? The unreliable narrator is a fun thing for writers to use, and you have to think, do I trust this narrator in the point of view that he or she is taking? Let's see what we've learned here. The narrator is a character in the story and tells what he or she experiences. That would be first person. Their narrator is an observer and knows everything about the characters. That would be omniscient. And of course, the narrator is an observer and describes the thoughts and feelings of just one character. Third person, limited. There we go. Awesome. Wonderful. I hope you got those right. For this is the end. Thank you very much and good luck. Bye bye.